Hi, my name is Ricardo Wyngaard, and today I want to talk about paying board members. It's a controversial topic, and before I explain my view on it, I think it's important for us to look at firstly, what does the law say about paying your board members of a non-profit organization, and secondly, in terms of the governance codes, what's expressed in those codes regarding the payment of board members. After that, I'll talk about my view on whether or not you should pay or not pay your board members. So first, if I look at the legislation in the South African context, I notice that there's nothing saying that you cannot pay board members a fee for serving on the board. So let's have a look at some of the legislation. First, the Non-Profit Organizations Act. Section 12 of the Non-Profit Organizations Act says that the founding document of the organization or the law in which it has been established should state that the organization's income and property are not distributable to its members or office bearers except as reasonable compensation for services rendered. So that says reasonable compensation for services rendered. Would board service qualify as a service? In my view, yes, because you do render a service to the organization. Let's look at the Income Tax Act as far as it relates to public benefit organizations. Section 30 of the Income Tax Act provides that the founding document of the organization must provide that it has not and will not pay any remuneration as defined in the 4th schedule of the Act to any employee, office bearer, member, or other person which is excessive, having regard to what is generally considered reasonable in the sector and in relation to the service rendered, and has not and will not economically benefit any person in a manner which is not consistent with this object or with the object of the organization. So even the Income Tax Act does not prohibit payment to board members, office bearers, or any other person, provided that it's reasonable compensation, and that's in the context of the service being rendered, and in the context of the non-profit sector. Now, I don't think SARS will have a problem if board members are getting paid. So that's, in a summary, the legal situation. I mean, there's the Trust Property Control Act as well, and it's clear you can pay trustees. The Companies Act also does not prohibit the payment of board members. So in general, the law provides for reasonable compensation when it comes to board members and employees. So let's look at the governance codes in South Africa. So there are two codes that are important or relevant in the context. The first one is the King Report on Corporate Governance, and there's the Independent Code. And both of them mention payment of board members. So the King Report or the Code basically says that directors or board members of organizations can get reasonable compensation for board members. The subsequent to the report, the King Committee released the practice notes for NPOs, and that document basically encourages organizations not to pay board members, but they refer to it as rendering pro bono services. So it is a code, it's not law. So whether or not you pay your board members wouldn't make a difference in terms of the code. And the same with the Independent Code, although the Independent Code refers to a modest fee that can be paid to board members, and that's taking into account the resources of the organization. Now, the Independent Code seems to me is leaning more towards paying board members if it is affordable. Again, it's a code, so it's not law. So it doesn't make a difference for the organization if it pays or if it doesn't pay. In terms of the two codes that are out there, there's a case to be made that board members can get paid. So then lastly, I want to look at the context. I've read a study that was done in the US in 2007. It was on corporate governance in non-profit organizations. It was at the time the biggest study on board governance in the non-profit sector. And the study concluded that less than 2% of board members in non-profit organizations in the US are getting paid for serving on their board. In fact, according to the independent code, it's advisable that board members make donations to organizations on which they serve. And so that's a bit of a contradiction, I think, in terms of making a donation and getting paid. And my understanding is that globally, non-profit organizations are not, as a general rule, paying their board members. And that's not because of law, but it's just because of the nature of non-profit organizations. So my view is that board members of non-profit organizations should not get paid when they serve on the board. And I've got a couple of reasons for saying that. First reason is organizations, non-profits are mostly reliant on donor funding. Donors are making donations in pursuit of the objectives of the organization. So the idea is that donors are saying, use our money for public benefit objectives, for the beneficiaries of the organization. Now I understand, and we all understand that, you need to pay staff to do the work. The question is not regarding staff members, but about board members. And board members accept the responsibility to make sure that those funds are used in pursuit of the objectives. If they are getting paid, by implication they've got a financial interest. So let's say a donation is being made to the organization. The board has to decide what portion of that money goes to their pockets and what portion would go to the beneficiaries. And that creates a financial or a conflict of interest which is not acceptable by most donors within this context when they're donating money to an organization. They don't want that kind of conflict. So it's an implied rule. Some donors are more express or explicit than others. A couple of years ago I attended the NPO conference in Johannesburg in 2012. And the National Minister of Social Development was there. Now the Department of Social Development is a significant donor to the non-profit sector. And the Minister made a statement saying that the money they're giving to organizations are not meant to pay board members. So that's sort of the sentiment expressed by a donor, which I think is a general sentiment within the context. So, a second important consideration is the fact that, let's say an organization or somebody gets approached by two organizations. The one is saying, please serve on our board, we'll pay you an attendance fee. The other one is saying, please come and serve on our board, but we can't pay you. Maybe we'll get tea and biscuits at the board meetings. I think the tendency might be towards the organization that will pay. By implication, the organization that cannot pay would find it even more difficult to attract board members. And I think, that would be, to a large extent, detrimental to community-based organizations that haven't got the resources to attract board members. And then thirdly, I don't think payment of board members automatically result in effective governance. I've seen that as an argument. You just have to look into the commercial sector, at commercial organizations. If payment of board members, which is the standard within the commercial sector, if that has resulted in effective governance, that wouldn't be correct, because you see a lot of scandals, and that's in the context where board members are getting paid. So payment of board members does not, in my view, result in effective governance, and it will not do so within the non-profit sector. I think it will actually move the non-profit sector from public benefit to private benefit, and that is a problem in my view. Thank you for having watched this video. You're welcome to leave comments below. If you like it, please click on the like button. Thank you.